Hello, everybody. I'm Julián Castro, the CEO of the Latino Community Foundation. For those who don't know, the Latino Community Foundation is the nation's largest foundation that focuses on investing in Latinos and Latinas. That's based in the Bay Area of California, and for years has been focused, among other things, on responding to natural disasters by ensuring that the most vulnerable residents affected by those natural disasters are able to rebuild and to recover. And that's the subject of our focus today. I want to thank you for joining us for a webinar that we're calling Toward an Equitable Recovery, a spotlight on LA's grassroots response to wildfires. Before I go further, though, I want to thank our interpreter and to introduce her. Her name is Reina Rodriguez. She'll be interpreting from English to Spanish. So in early January, as I'm sure everybody on this Zoom knows, the Los Angeles area was devastated by wildfires that took lives and that destroyed thousands of homes. It shook the Los Angeles community and far beyond that. The Latino Community Foundation and many other organizations immediately went to work to put resources into an effort to ensure that all Los Angeles residents who were affected by the wildfires could get the immediate relief that they needed, could start to rebuild, and eventually to recover. That's the focus of our conversation today, as well as in the medium and the long term, how do we ensure that that recovery is equitable, that one day, and it's going to take years from now, that the city of Los Angeles is a city that everybody is offered an opportunity in, where people who were affected by these wildfires were able to come back even stronger. Of course, that's easier said than done, but the organizations that I'm pleased to be in conversation with today, the leaders of those organizations, are helping to make sure that that's possible. Now, you're going to have an opportunity also, we hope, to ask questions toward the end of our conversation after a series of questions and answers between me and our panelists. Hopefully the chat is working right now. If it's not, we're going to try and get it up and going so that you can put questions into the chat so that some of your questions can be asked of these panelists as well. The Latino Community Foundation is focused on wildfire response in three basic phases. First, we're focused on immediate relief efforts. People need all sorts of things. They need food, they need rental assistance if they've been displaced, they need shelter, all sorts of things in the immediate aftermath of a natural disaster. Our second phase that we're focused on is ensuring that those organizations that are Latino-led and BIPOC-led have the wherewithal to continue to provide for the people that they serve, so that they can help shape the recovery, from being able to give input to being able to ensure that the services that are needed to reach those people that they're working for are there. And then third, resilience. Ensuring that the infrastructure of an equitable recovery is put in place. This involves long-term power building with the goal of making sure that ultimately that a natural disaster like this hopefully never happens again, but if it does, that the community is more resilient and that the most vulnerable residents, including in the case of the Latino community, many people who are domestic workers, who are gardeners, who are street vendors, who are both homeowners and renters, that they have an opportunity to recover in as quick and an effective a way as possible. So far, the Latino community has put out $2.1 million in grants to 18 different Latino, Latina, and BIPOC-led organizations. That's been made possible by the generous contributions of a number of foundations, as well as over 2,000 donors from across the country who share our goals. And today, we're really pleased to be in conversation with really a dynamic set of leaders who are in charge of making sure that this equitable recovery transpires. before I introduce them, I just want to say a word that oftentimes in natural disasters, the recovery process is slower than anybody wants. It's frustrating. It is heart-wrenching. It is painstakingly bureaucratic. And there's a lot of support that happens for people behind the scenes that both has nothing to do with the government and also that is supported by a wonderful network of dedicated nonprofits. It's those dedicated nonprofits that are part of the conversation today. These are nonprofits that the Latino Community Foundation is proud to partner with that are rooted in community. This is not the first time that they've engaged in either response to natural disasters or certainly not deep work in the communities that they're in. Let me introduce our panelists today. First, we have Pablo Alvarado, Executive Director of the National Day Labor Organizing Network, NDLON. We have Rahje Branch, the Executive Director of Umoja Food Collective. We have Rudy Espinoza, CEO of Inclusive Action, and Janet Martinez, co-founder and Vice Executive Director of CIELO. Thank y'all. Bienvenidos. Welcome to this conversation. And more importantly, thank you for the tremendous work that each and every one of you is doing through your organizations to provide immediate relief and, as we're discussing today, to help ensure that the recovery in Los Angeles is an equitable one. Pablo, I want to start off with a question to you. The National Day Labor Organizing Network is really in Los Angeles, rooted there in the Pasadena community. Tell us a little bit about the work of NDLON, and specifically, if you could describe the response in the immediate aftermath of the wildfires. We had an opportunity to visit and to see the operation, the relief operation that y'all stood up, which was just tremendous. Talk to us about that work.
Secretary, thank you so much for inviting our organization to participate in this conversation, and also thank you so much for the assistance that you have provided to the Pasadena Community Job Center. NDLON is a network of worker centers, and it turns out that our headquarter offices are in Pasadena. And the only center that our network operates directly is the Pasadena Community Job Center. And I happen to be a resident of this beautiful city of Pasadena. So immediately after the wind stopped, the fires were still happening. We had an assembly of workers, and we asked the workers, have you been impacted? And some of them came and said, all I possess in this life is in my body right now. But not only that, I don't have a job anymore because the house of my employer burned down as well. And that's how immigrants are part of the socio-economic fabric of every community in this country. So the workers decided that they possess a set of skills and tools, and they immediately created what we call the Fire Relief Brigade. And they went out to the street to all over Altadena and Pasadena to remove debris, to remove trees that were blocking driveways, sidewalks, and streets. And they ended up removing about over 3,100 tons of debris in the city. In fact, we could say that they clean the entire city of Pasadena and Altadena from the debris that had fallen. During the first 4 weeks, about 12,000 volunteers joined those day laborers to do this operation of cleaning. At the same time, we were distributing food, water, clothing, shoes, personal protective gear, that different entities, individual families, foundations were donating to us, and everything that goes out. The operation still continues. It's every Friday. throughout the day. The distribution continues. At the same time, we had some of the emergency assistance to families. At this point, we have over 1,000, um, over 1,000 undocumented families who may have kids who are U.S. citizens but cannot access any assistance from the federal government or are afraid to apply. And we found ways through other organizations, through churches, to provide emergency assistance. So at the same time, we were doing the training of workers in the middle of the response. We have to be responsible in terms of how workers are protected when they go out and do cleanup. So we trained about 175 workers in disaster preparedness. So they immediately, as soon as they were trained, they were deployed, and they were the leaders of the many brigades that were going throughout the city. So we're certainly very proud of what the Pasadena Community Job Center has done. About 50,000 people have been assisted directly. 2,200 people who lost everything have been assisted at the job center. And about 2,200 as well who lost their jobs are being assisted. In total, it's about 70,000 hours of volunteer work that people have put in. And this is just the immediate response, the emergency response.
Yeah, it was, to be there and to see it a few days after the fires had started was just amazing to see both the goodwill of the public and the donation efforts, and also how y'all were marshaling all of the efforts of the day labor community, their generosity, their determination to do what they could, and also their vulnerability and the work that NDLON has done to make sure that they're not forgotten. Thank you for filling us in on that. Rahje, you're also rooted in this same community, and Umoja is doing excellent work as well. What was the experience like from your perspective? And talk to us about centering BIPOC women-owned small businesses in the LA area.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I want to sort of just set the context in which Umoja was operating in and of itself, right? Umoja was founded during COVID, during the pandemic, recognizing that 41% of Black-owned businesses were forced to close their doors during the pandemic. That was the statistics that came out, once we started coming out of the pandemic. And so Umoja, the Swahili word meaning unity, really, it speaks to this proverb that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go farther, you go together. And so Umoja had already been working to support Black food entrepreneurs with grants, with technical assistance, with workshops, as an effort to also combat food insecurity and obesity in our communities. And so we were already doing that. But when the fires hit, South Los Angeles and Southern California are small. That's what I try to explain to people who may not be from the area. It's impossible to not be affected by the fires or know someone who was affected by the fires. And so on a personal level, we all just started picking up the phone and calling folks. Hey, are you okay? Do you need housing? What do you need? And then, sort of in the name of food, to use a food analogy, we potlucked our resources together, right? Umoja didn't have the funding immediately to distribute additional grants. We're a newer organization. But I picked up the phone and I called a good friend, Nancy Santiago from Tribus Global, who was able to connect us to other folks like the Latino Community Foundation, and say, hey, we need some support. How can we help? We called our friends at Fractal Strategies, who also had been doing work supporting BIPOC women businesses, Morganite Writing Company. Who else did we call? Blacklight Imaging, folks who were doing a lot of branding and marketing work for businesses. And so we came together and we said, okay, what can we do? What resources do each of us have as organizations and businesses that we can pull together to create a stronger effort. And I know there was so much happening, for individual families, and that's absolutely important. But from our perspective, what we knew is that for BIPOC women are often the staples, the head of households for their families, right? And so we knew that by supporting them, we were in turn supporting their families and uplifting communities. And so since then, we've been able to, with your support and with the support of others, we've been able to give out $10,000 in grants within 6 weeks of the fires happening. We plan to continue to do that. But we knew that by supporting BIPOC women, Black and Latino women who were staples in their communities, head of households in their families, that we would then in turn create a ripple effect across the community.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. And what do you see going forward? I mean, you clearly, I'm sure, have seen gaps that exist there for these entrepreneurs. What's the biggest concern that you have going forward?
Yeah. So there was a lot of infrastructure damage, right? There was a lot of loss financially that took place. The fires um, it wasn't just a quick fire that we were able to put out in a day. Unfortunately, they ravaged our communities for weeks at a time. And so um, that financial loss hit a lot of our small businesses, right? And they are going to take a long time to recover. And so that immediate funding was vital to really, I think the statistic is that small businesses may only have about 2 weeks cash reserve. So then to be able to give them funds to help keep their businesses afloat. We also know that Black and Latino communities are deeply invested in their communities by hiring others within their community, so that those funds were then used to be able to help pay folks, even if they weren't able to come into work or even if they weren't able to vend at a farmer's market. And so when I talk about the loss, for weeks at a time, folks weren't able to sell service or give out services or sell their products. And so the funding will continue. In addition to the funding, we want to be able to support them with knowledge. What other resources are out there, right? Helping them apply to grants, helping them really build their internal infrastructure so that they can we know that for us, we wanted to remove the barriers for application, but the reality is for some larger grants, there are some barriers and there's some paperwork that's needed. And so supporting these businesses to get what we call sort of paperwork ready so that they can apply for those larger grants, for those $50,000, $100,000 grants, to be able to continue to rebuild their external infrastructure, right? If those were lost, some of our business owners lost their homes, unfortunately, and they operate out of their homes. And so not only do they not have shelter, but they also don't have a place to operate their business. And so helping them get larger grants and access to funding that they can rebuild that way. But then also, we are deeply committed to the mental and the spiritual and the emotional well-being of our folks. And so we do plan to continue to do programming that will pour into them during this tragic time.
Yeah, that capacity building is so essential, and I saw it on the other end, when I was in city government and then at HUD. It makes a difference whether folks have just the capacity to submit that paperwork, to run through all the bureaucratic traps. It's not as easy as saying, hey, the money is out there, go get it, right? So that's important work.
Exactly.
The many things that y'all are doing. Janet, I wanted to ask you, I know the focus of CIELO has largely been on the indigenous community, which is very diverse there in Los Angeles, and perhaps you can speak to that. But I wanted to ask you, how did CIELO activate in the immediate aftermath of the wildfires to serve Los Angeles's indigenous community?
Yeah, thank you all so much. It's wonderful to be here with a bunch of amazing speakers. And I think that one of the things that CIELO really is a close bond to the community. We were at our food boxes one afternoon, and somebody came in a bike, and I said, "Oh, what are you doing in a bike? You're gonna come back. You're gonna come get your groceries this week." And he told me, "Well, I have to start thinking a little more precariously on my budget because I just lost my job. It was lost in the fire. It burnt down, and now I know I'm a single household income because my wife is gonna have to carry the household now." He's like, "So I came in the bike because we don't know what's gonna happen, you know, in a few weeks from now when I no longer have a job." And I think that that was one of the indicators that told us we need to activate. We need to activate the networks that we had during our Undocumented Indigenous Fund, which was a fund that we had during COVID. And so we started to activate. And one of the things that we're seeing on this end to give us a kind of idea of what's going on in the Indigenous community is through the fund, we're able to see the different populations that are being impacted. And some of the top populations that we're seeing are Zapotecs, Maya Yucatecos, Chinantecos, Mixtecos, Mijes, and Quiches. And the industries that we're seeing that they're reporting having worked in is the restaurant industry, you know, cleaning houses, street vendors, gardeners, and day laborers. And I think that this speaks a lot to like what everybody has shared, which is that there are we're so intertwined in Los Angeles. We're so intertwined in ways that sometimes we forget that everybody was impacted by this fire, right? That there was a ripple effect that really, really impacted so many people in the community. And I just wanted to share with you all while I was going through like our documentation of the fund, there were some people that shared really impactful quotes and stories. And some of the people that got the fund submitted, there was a section in the application that said, "Is there something you'd like to share?" And some of them said, "I was still working when the fires were very close to the house where I had my job, and it hurts me to lose the house where I worked for almost 10 years. There was also a beautiful story of this man that was helping his boss turn off the fires. And he said, "I returned home thinking about my workplace. My boss texted me, 'It's gone.' And that's when I realized everything we'd done to protect the place was insufficient. But he's fine. That's when I realized that family will always be the best thing to protect." And there are quotes like this that you see that people are so intertwined with their workplace, with the people that they work with, that they were seeing every day, that we're seeing those impacts now, right? We're seeing the loss of jobs. And it wasn't just something that was economical, but there was also an impact that was really emotional. And I think that it was for a lot of us when you've driven through those fire sites. It's so emotional to see it. But what CIELO did to really kind of like address at least the economical portion of that, we're seeing that there was a loss of a lot of jobs around, I think we saw that there was around 99% said that they were affected economically by the fires of the people that received the funds. And that's like an extraordinary number. And around 76% said they lost their jobs due to the fires. Another 92% reported loss of hours, right? So we're seeing that it has a different array of impacts economically. So what we were able to do was start the fire fund. We've distributed more than $100,000 in the fire fund. And we also continued our food boxes, and we did them more vigorously. Now we have them every week instead of every 2 weeks as we previously had them. And to date, from the fire to now, we've distributed around 1,700 food boxes weekly to community members that come to CIELO that either receive the fire fund or have come from different word of mouth to come and receive these food boxes. And I do want to say, you know, I do want to note that, you know, thankfully, through partnerships like with Inclusive Action, we were also able to, you know, have a table for them to give out their funds, to outreach to the community members, to also increase the impact that we have. So I really think that this speaks to how Los Angeles came together to work collectively to support the families and the people that were also directly impacted by the fires.
You know, you touch on such a great point that, you know, whether it's COVID or the response to the Los Angeles wildfires, there's some sort of common denominators and also an underlying need. One of the things I remember when you know, we saw NDLON's effort and your effort was, you know, over the years, the safety net itself has been torn apart so much, just in general, a lot of times for people. And so many people are living hand to mouth as it is without the you know, tumult and the tearing apart that happens after a natural disaster. And there are also ways that they often need a bridge to access services, for instance, with translation. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ongoing provision of services or work that y'all will do that you do 24/7 and that are going to be particularly relevant as Los Angeles seeks to recover and tries to get input from every part of a very diverse community?
Yeah. During the fires, one of the things that we activated very quickly was the safety measures that they had said when walking during the fires with the mask, with the protective materials that we also were able to distribute. But one of the key components of that was also creating resources in Indigenous languages in our sites, on our social, to share with community members to be able to understand what were the preventative measures they could take to take care of their health during these times. We know that we all breathed in that air, right, that are in Los Angeles. So it was definitely something that we activated almost immediately as soon as the fires started. Additionally, I think that it's really important to take into account what Indigenous communities can voice on their experience in the recovery efforts, right? So I do think that it's important to hold focus groups in Indigenous languages. We've done it with the city in the past, with the city of Los Angeles, specifically when it comes to environmental impacts. But I think that this conversation is so important and so necessary for everybody in Los Angeles to be a part of in order to move forward to a more equitable Los Angeles.
Well, thank you for that. Rudy, of course, Inclusive Action has been doing impactful work for a number of years, and work especially powerful with Latina and Latino entrepreneurs. Y'all had to sort of adjust very quickly in the aftermath of the wildfires to turn basically what's generally CDFI loan program into a grant program, and y'all have done it just in an excellent way. But just talk to us about the Special Relief Fund for workers in the open air economy that Inclusive Action launched, and why you saw this as so intensely necessary in that moment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Latino Community Foundation, for hosting this space. You all have been day ones for many of us, being allies and supporting us and being connectors. I think I appreciate also the recognition of Inclusive Action and our sort of unique way of doing things. Inclusive Action is a nonprofit CDFI. We're certified by the Treasury as at least through today as a community development financial institution. That means that we provide loans. We're a low interest lender to small businesses. So Rahje, I want to connect with you after for sure, just so I could be an ally with you to make sure folks have access to resources. We help entrepreneurs that can't get capital elsewhere. But one thing that the reason why I like working here at Inclusive Action is we're not just a lender. We started as advocates 15 years ago when we started to work with street vendors in our communities that were being criminalized by the city and by the county. And we began working with them and other allies to advocate for the legalization of street vending. That was the beginning of Inclusive Action 15 years ago. So our lending work and the resource allocation work, the work we do as intermediaries is rooted in a lens of advocacy. So we see our community with all the identities that it holds. They're not just business owners. They're not just workers. They're also heads of households. They're also leaders in their community. And so that means that we also have to think a little bit more expansively about how we get resources to them. So when the fires ignited, some of our team members were evacuated. And I remember I got a call from my new board chair and said, "Hey, Rudy, what are we going to do?" During the pandemic, our organization put together a relief fund for street vendors who were not available to get PPP money back then. And we thought, hey, my board chair said, what are we going to do this time? And my team within hours mobilized to with the decision that we were going to set up a fund to support street vendors, but also other what we call open air workers, folks that work outside. As Janet was talking about the air, we were concerned about the jardineros, the folks that were the contractors that rely on being outside, the recycle workers that go in our neighborhoods to pick up cans that were staying inside because of what was going on, or perhaps they were victims of the fire. And so the idea was simple. The idea was, let's assemble some money, and then we're going to give cash out to people. We're going to run it back. We did this during the pandemic, and we're going to raise a little bit of money and then get this money out to people. We did this because we knew that folks in our communities, if they lose one day of work, they're in trouble for the month. They just lose one day of work. They're literally working day to day, hoping to earn that income so they could pay their bills at the end of the month. And we were worried that, man, folks are going to be out of work for a little bit. What can we do to contribute to that? And so Inclusive Action began to assemble this fund. And I'll tell you, Mr. Secretary and friends, that in the beginning, we thought it was going to be a small thing. We thought, oh, we'll put together a thing. We'll wire people cash. It'll be fine. It has become such a big effort. And we've been privileged to work with folks like NDLON and with CIELO and many other organizations to reach people. And as of yesterday, we have served over 4,600 workers with $500 cash cards. So over $2.3 million have gone out to workers that were not getting access to other resources. So I am proud of my team who stretched beyond their daily capacities as lenders and as advocates to do this on the side, right? Our team in early on said, we're not taking an admin fee. We're going to get money. We're going to get it out to people. And that was sort of our decision and how we did it. And so I'm proud of my team. But I'll tell you that I'm discouraged at the same time. I'm discouraged by folks that are still don't realize that our folks need resources for the basics. Our director of operations sent me a data earlier this week. We're giving MasterCard debit cards with the money, so we're able to track what people are spending their money on, right? Anonymously, of course, but you could see where retailers are seeing these cards. Guess what they're using their money on? The Costco, Food for Less, Superior. Basic utilities, y'all, gas, Janet. I'm thinking about the person on the bike. So these are the basics. And so I'm discouraged because the fires show us how vulnerable our communities are. And that we're not yet prepared for the next crisis. I don't want to get ahead of it, Mr. Secretary, but I'm proud of what we've done, but I'm also already thinking of like, we have to build systems that allow people to not only rely on the small nonprofit that's based in Boyle Heights to do these things. We need to build something bigger that can really care for our communities.
Yeah, you're right. I want to get into that conversation in a few moments, but you make a great point that folks will remember the 1980s. Folks who are around will remember the 1980s and this stereotype of the welfare queen that the Reagan administration furthered back then that was always a lie. And in the pandemic, we saw that when people received their relief payments, they used them for rent, they used them for groceries, for other basic necessities. People know their priorities and they get it. And so this example that you're giving us, I think, is consistent with that, is that maybe we should be trusting people a little bit more than we've almost been taught oftentimes by some politicians to trust people, because they know they have to provide for themselves, for their families, and they use that money that they need prudently by and large. And then secondly, one of the things that we've heard very clearly as well, and that you just talked about, is that need for immediate relief continues. Right now, people need still rental assistance. They need money for food. They need money to get by because they're still picking up the pieces, whether it's their business, their home, trying to get another job, and so forth. That's such an important point. And we're gonna ask one more round of questions to the panelists, but I want to remind folks that if you have questions, please drop them into the chat. We're gonna aim for a little bit of time toward the end so that we can ask a couple of your questions. So don't be shy. Drop some questions into the chat if you have them. And I want to go back to you, Pablo. You talked about the amazing response of NDLON and the day labor community. What role are day laborers going to play? Are they playing now? And then will they play in an equitable recovery for Los Angeles?
Thank you so much for that question. One of the difficulties of the migrant community, not just day laborers, but migrant communities in general, migrant workers, is that they have to rebuild their own lives while they help rebuild other people's lives. And we are in the second phase of our intervention already. And workers in this moment, as we had the brigades during the emergency response, we continue with those brigades, but they're doing something different now. We're collaborating with different organizations to get this done. So what's happening is that many families are coming back to the area, and particularly to the homes that are adjacent to where the fires took place. And those homes have not been remediated. It's thousands of people. Right now, as we speak, group of organizers is meeting with tenants in a building of 48 units that was partially impacted, burned down. Everything around it is burned down. The majority of them have come back to the building, no remediation whatsoever. There are little kids there. There are elders. They don't have electricity. They don't have running water. They don't have gas. This is happening right now. Adjacent to that building, there's so many other apartment complex where people have just come back because some of them were put in shelters that are very far away, and they have jobs here. This is where they live. This is where they work. And in this particular building that I am talking about, workers, because it's day laborers who live there, they have tried to move to other places, but they are asked for their credit history. They are required that they earn 3 times as much as what the rent costs. So what are they going to do? They just need to come back. So we know that people are coming back. Adjacent to that building, there is a better building. This is senior African Americans who don't have insurance to remediate their apartments. So we've created a crew of workers, and we're collaborating with different groups that are identifying the most vulnerable families, and we're sending that crew of well-trained workers. This is a different kind of training. This is not just the disaster preparedness training that workers need. It's how to go in and use the proper respirator, the proper equipment to do cleaning that is good, so the families can come back safely. And that training is different because it's not just theory; it's also practice. So we've trained 2 brigades of 20 workers, or 40 workers out there. Cleaning one home requires 5 workers, and it takes 5 days to do that. So if you drive around the area, you would also see that people have come back, and everything around their homes is burned, but that's not a priority for the Army Corps of Engineers or the Environmental Protection Agency to come and clean. And for us, that should be a priority. It should be a priority to make sure that at least seniors have what they need to clean. It costs about 15 when you hire one of those contractors, is about $15,000 to $20,000 to remediate homes and apartments. Who has $15,000? So I think this is the moment when nonprofits we can do as much as we can, and believe me, what we've done has been incredible, because in the face of disaster, you also have to build community in order to face the challenges, but government should be there as well, and should have clear priorities. And it's very simple to figure out those priorities. Just drive around and look who's back, and look where is being rebuilt. Those homeowners who have insurance, they are already removing the 6 inches of soils that they need to remove. They are removing that debris because they can hire private contractors. So people don't know how to you have to sign up for debris removal. Some people don't even know how to use a computer. The elders don't know how to use a computer to sign up. So you have all of these issues taking place, and we are obviously doing as much as we can. As I said, in our database, we have over 1,000 families who are undocumented. They need to be accompanied on a long-term basis. So we're looking to this not just in terms of what we need to do, because this is an immediate, and to me, it's equally urgent as the response, because we don't even know what the contaminants, that the toxics that have been released into the air and into the soil. We don't know, because there's no comprehensive study that tells us. And now that there is an administration that doesn't believe in science, I don't think that we're gonna get that. So we're getting researchers to come and help us do one house at a time. Just to do a testing in one home costs $3,000. Who has $3,000? It's not this simple. So I think this is urgent as well, because if we don't act now, in 5, 6, 10 years, we might be looking at people dying because they were exposed to, for a long time, to contaminants that are bad for people. So I think that the fire didn't discriminate in who it harmed. And the emergency community relief effort did not discriminate in who it helped. And I believe that the recovery should not discriminate in who it supports as well. And we got to make sure that we build power to pressure the authorities to do the right thing here, and to have a process of not just rebuilding, but restoring, because restoration is different than reconstruction. And we need all of that,
That point that you make about everybody being able to participate and to benefit in the recovery, the rebuilding, the restoration, is such a key point. And Rahje, I want to ask you to talk about sort of the system-wide, how do we create an infrastructure of support for the entrepreneurs that Umoja works with and for, that lasts beyond this immediate response?
Yeah, so I know time is of the essence, so I'm going to answer that question, and then I'm going to dovetail into something that I really want to touch on, if you'll allow me, right? So in terms of building the infrastructure, part of that is knowledge sharing. And so what we discovered in this process of supporting businesses is that some of our businesses have similar needs, whether it's purchasing, right? They have similar pain points, but they don't know. As an entrepreneur, sometimes we're working in our own silos. We're going really quickly, trying to provide for our families, trying to provide for our businesses. And so creating space to do a lot of knowledge transfer, building the infrastructure for lists, so that folks can know where to go, so I can purchase, for our food entrepreneurs, right? Like, where can I go to purchase these boxes so I can box up food, right? That's a pain point and a question that we are able to answer, because we know that so-and-so at this business also uses this. How about y'all come together, do some collective purchasing, collective action in real time? And so that is one of the ways that we are working with our businesses, but also giving them business. These are people who want to work. Hire them. Whether you're a foundation or you're in philanthropy, if you're having your luncheon, hire them to cater. But I want to talk about a piece that's really important, and it jogged my memory when you were talking about sort of the lie of the welfare queen. Our folks deserve agency. Our folks deserve to be able to decide how they want the support. And so we want to make sure that we are listening. And so a part of that, we've developed a comprehensive needs assessment to better understand the economic, social, and infrastructural impact that the fires had. And so as a part of that, we're compensating folks for their time for taking this assessment. It's an assessment and it's an interview. Please feel free to reach out to me so that we can make sure to get your businesses or those who are impacted a part of this assessment. And so we're compensating them for their time, but oftentimes with government response or even in an effort to scale, we sort of create a one-size-fits-all model for how to, provide support. And we, like I said, our folks deserve agency, and we know that not every business needs the same thing. And so we want to be able to provide tailored, unique support. We want to also be able to share that information once the results of that assessment comes back. We want to be able to share that information for other entities that are providing support so that they can know what the real needs are. And so I did want to make sure that I highlighted that and touched on that, because that is also a part of the recovery effort, and knowing that we're not just going to give every business or every person the same thing, and that folks get to decide. This isn't a handout. This isn't, just support. This is something that the rebuilding of their community requires their input and their leadership. And so we want to make sure that we collect that information to be able to provide that tailored support.
And is there a website or an email that folks should go
Let me
to?
go ahead and drop my email in the chat, and I can get you all connected with the right folks. We're working with Fractal Strategies and others who are actually doing that assessment.
Terrific. Thank you for that. And Janet, I want to ask you, what are the gaps that you see that philanthropy can fill, or what role do you think philanthropy should continue to play as the rebuild and the recovery go forward, and particularly as it relates to the indigenous community?
First, I want to, thank LCF, their individual funders, the foundations that gave to LCF, right, to be able to create the fire fund that we're able to talk about right now. Because I do think it's important that this is a time of unity. This is a time for us to step up. I know that there's been a lot of situations or a lot of policy changes at the national level, federal level, right, that have impacted the way that funding has been doled out to different foundations. And we are hearing from different funders that there is a fear now, to support immigrant rights organizations, to support organizations that don't align with what we're seeing is the predominant narrative that's taking over the media. So I do think that right now is not a time to be skittish for foundations, and to really acknowledge the compounding effects of COVID and of the fires, especially in situations in Los Angeles or other places that are facing environmental climate, the impacts of climate change, right? That there are communities of color that are definitely being impacted by that, in that, including Indigenous people. So I do feel like it's a time to step up to build stronger systems, right? As many of the panelists spoke about, like, yes, the government needs to come in and support, and we do need those social services to be restored and not cut, but we also need for the nonprofit sector to be stronger at this point, because we are seeing that there is a shift of less investment in nonprofits because of the political climate, and also a lot of foundations are looking to reallocate their support. So I do feel like this is a time for all of us to step up and to chip in and do what we like to call in Zapotec, which is very close to Umoja, kind of like Rahje shared, is Guzuna, which is the collective work for the collective good. And I think that this is an opportunity for all of us to step up and do the collective work for the collective good, because I think that we see a lot of intersections where a lot of the communities that we all serve that are speaking here today are being impacted by the fires, by COVID, and we're seeing that the recovery is really slow. And I think especially in Los Angeles, we're seeing that first came COVID and now the fires. And I saw one of the comments that somebody left in our funds that was like, I was already a month behind, and now I'm 2 months behind because of the fires. So I do think that we're seeing the compounding interest at a micro level, and then we also want to see their investment change and a collective work towards the collective good of Los Angeles.
Absolutely. That collective action, as you say, is so important to ensuring, especially that the most vulnerable communities, when they work together, when they coalesce, are able to benefit from the recovery. And then Rudy, finally, and my apologies, I'll ask for this to be kind of a quick answer, since we want to give a little bit of time for a couple of questions. Just tell us about the future in terms of the street vending community over the years. And Los Angeles is by no means is the only city that has had this hot and cold relationship with often cold with street vendors. I think of San Francisco and what they've done in the Mission District there in terms of sweeping people out and so forth. But one of the things, hopefully, that people have recognized both from the pandemic and then also from this wildfire experience is how interconnected people are. That what happens in the lives of street vendors or domestic workers or outdoor workers, that it does impact everybody else one way or another. What is the future in terms of creating an equitable recovery for open air workers?
I think the future I'd like to think that the future is going to be one that is going to flex the full extent of our imaginations, Mr. Secretary. I think we're going to have to really think about how do we create new public systems for entrepreneurs like street vendors to go in and get their permits easily and get the equipment that they need so they can operate legally. That work is ongoing. I think the future requires that to be streamlined. So folks have a great engagement and interaction with their public sector, with their local government. I think as a lender, I think our team is excited about designing new loan products in different ways to get the support to these entrepreneurs that need capital, that can't get capital elsewhere. So our team is mobilizing to think about how can we reimagine lending so they can get the capital that they need so they can invest in their businesses and grow those businesses and create jobs. I think that the future also requires, though, us to be advocates. I'm like a broken record. I say that all the time, but it's true. We have to think about how do we lock arms to advocate for systems change, because the current systems are designed to keep us back. And so right now, a few of my team members are in Sacramento because we have a really ambitious policy platform. One big bill for street vendors is Senate Bill 635 with Senator Maria Elena Durazo. Senate Bill 635, the Street Vendor Business Protection Act. This is really focused on protecting the identity and the data of vendors. Again, as they go in to get their permits, they're giving their data to their state government. We want to make sure that that's protected and that they're okay and they feel that they want to keep coming back to their public sector to engage. And then as far as the fires, we're excited to work with the California CLT Network and Senator Perez on Senate Bill 658, which is creating, it seeks to create an opportunity to purchase act to fight back speculators that are trying to buy land. So entrepreneurs and workers and nonprofits have to all sort of step up together to advocate for better systems. And I think that's the future. If we want to have a good future, we need to do that. Janet mentioned the Trump administration, and I do want to sort of add to the call and the appeal to philanthropy. Last week, we announced a difficult decision that our organization made to join a lawsuit because we're concerned about the impending deal of the IRS sharing data with the Department of Homeland Security to target taxpayers that have ITINs. Folks that are not eligible for a Social Security number can get an ITIN, and that's how they pay taxes. Y'all, immigrants pay $96 billion a year in taxes, and they don't get a lot of that back. And so now there's a weaponization of this. And so we joined this lawsuit. And I'll tell you, friends, that I don't know if I'm a little afraid. I don't think philanthropy is excited about that. I don't know if we're going to have the allies that we need to defend our community. And so we need to use strategies like a legal strategy to defend our community and to uphold the things that we care about. And so my appeal is that to think about all the different strategies, but also to make sure that we're locking arms and that philanthropy joins us. So we had to work quickly to support our neighborhoods. We need our foundations to also join us and move as quickly too.
Thank you for that. And let's just briefly take a couple of questions from the chat. Somebody asks, how can Latino communities and vulnerable communities in other states collaborate to start preparing to better respond to natural disasters based on your learnings in overcoming bureaucratic barriers so that when this happens in other places, nonprofits are basically able to take from what you all have learned and be able to not just activate resources, but also to better support Latinos, and I would extend that to vulnerable communities on an ongoing basis. now that y'all have just been through this experience, in many ways you're still in the middle of it, how does that happen? Is it through professional organizations? Is it through learning that you do with peer organizations in other ways? I'll just put that out there for whoever wants to take a crack at it.
I can certainly share our experience. What we've seen from like from Hurricane Katrina to the Sandy storm, to Andrew and the fires in Malibu, is that there's a segment of the Latino population, particularly the undocumented, not just the Latino, but undocumented folks in general, who are excluded from any assistance. So making sure that there is a basic infrastructure to assist those families. In other words, if there is a worker center in your area, become part of it, or create a new organization that's ready for it. Push for policies that require, for example, that employers do disaster preparedness training with all of their employees. So because and in terms of supporting the organization, because at the end of the day, one of the slogans that the workers came up, the workers are using a lot here, solo el pueblo salva el pueblo. And this is exactly what we've learned, that in moments like this is when you need community, when you need whatever you have, either a worker center or a community organization that can become a disaster hub for assistance in the community. Just make sure that those organizations are stronger, because that kind of infrastructure is not just to respond to these kinds of disaster, but that infrastructure is also to protect workers' rights, to protect civil rights, to protect immigrant rights, and to protect democracy, and to make sure that when particularly different segments, particularly in this moment that the undocumented community is under attack, the very least they have an organization that stands with them, that at the very least there is community, that people come together and talk to each other, see each other, and have each other.
We have one more just quick question. I would extend it to everybody. Whether you're still accepting donations, contributions for the work that you're doing related to the Los Angeles wildfires, and then feel free to drop into the chat more information on that. But if you could just briefly answer that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think I say that, like, yes, these efforts are going to cost in the millions and millions of dollars. And we know that it's going to take years, right? And so I want to just underscore that it's not, this is far from over. And so if I could say to anyone, especially if there's any philanthropy on the call, do not forget us, right? Open your pocketbooks and get creative in how you can support as well. I'm so grateful to the Latino Community Foundation because we're a newer organization. We're smaller, but they trusted us because we're deeply embedded in the community. And so really appreciate the work that Rudy is doing as well, to be able to get creative to how to meet these needs. And so the answer is yes, please. And let's continue to rebuild together alongside those who have been most affected.
Rudy, did you have?
Oh, I was just going to say, yes, we need resources. We're looking for resources for our advocacy work. On the cash assistance side, we are ramping that down. And so folks that are interested in giving to the cash assistance work, we're referring them to other partners who are still doing that work, but we're going to scale that down as into sort of, we feel like we did our contribution, and our role is to support others now.
And really fast, we are, our goal is to train in the next 2 years, 5,000 workers in disaster preparedness. And we're planning to distribute at least 10,000 personal protective gear kits. And so we're accepting all kinds of donations to build those kits.
Excellent.
Yeah, and just a final thank you to everyone on the panel. I think that we're going to be busy also thinking of like ways to support the different communities, right, that have been impacted. So please, 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 feel free to reach out, or I also sent our donation button on the chat if anybody would like to donate. But we're really happy, to be part of the relief efforts and to be in great company with these wonderful organizations.
I wanted to just say a huge thank you to you, Pablo, to Rahje, to Janet, and to Rudy for being a part of this conversation, and most importantly, for the work that you and the organizations that y'all lead are doing day in and day out to serve the most vulnerable in Los Angeles. I want to give a shout out to the LCF team for putting this together and for all of the grant making work and the relationship building that we've done. I'm really proud of our team and how authentically they come to the work. To all of our supporters and also all of our partners, and you just see 4 fantastic partners here. Big gracias for your work as well. I think what all of us heard very clearly today in this conversation is that the work continues. That there's a tremendous need out there that didn't stop when the wildfire stopped, that the rebuilding and the recovery, and most importantly, to make sure that it is equitable, that it is fair, especially for those who often don't have a voice, that's going to take a long time. It's going to take years. And it's going to involve the private sector, the public sector, and very vitally, the nonprofit sector. And so we want to encourage you to support organizations like the ones that you heard from today, who are doing such impactful and important work in Los Angeles. They are just irreplaceable to helping ensure that the most vulnerable not only get by, but are able eventually to thrive. Finally, I want to give one last shout out to our Latino Giving Circle network. Earlier, I mentioned the Latino community has been proud to put more than $2.1 million of resources into wildfire response. Part of that has been because of the enormous resources of our Latino Giving Circle network that pulled together their money and so far has invested over $40,000 from their giving in that effort. They're doing it from the heart and from a commitment to giving back. Thank you to the Latino Giving Circle Network. And thank all of you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again in the future.